Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
Do some of our leading organisations and institutions have a problem with ethics? And if so, what does it say about the people that lead them, and how can the culture be changed? From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. It wasn't that long ago that our banks were subject to a royal commission, uncovering misconduct on a grand scale. The commissioner called out the banks, saying theirs was a pursuit of short-term profit at the expense of basic standards and honesty. That and other controversies, like the recent exposé of sexual misconduct in Parliament House, have put a spotlight on the behaviour in workplaces around the country. Why do some organisations go rogue, so to speak? Well, Karen Gately says that at the heart of the issue is culture. Karen is author and advisor on human performance and leadership and CEO of HR consultancy Corporate Dojo. Karen tells Chris Ashmore that workplace culture is ultimately shaped by those in charge.
Organisations are entirely more likely to behave in ways that are appropriate when a culture of do the right thing and integrity and governance is actually driven from the top. And from the top, I'm talking about the board. It's not enough just for the CEO and their executive team to bring the right values. We actually need people who are governing the organisation to equally expect that we're doing the right thing and behaving in ways that are ethical.
So what's the answer then? How do you fix it? How do you ensure that ethical standards and community expectations are met?
Yeah, look, I think when it comes to culture, it does start by being very clear about the culture that we actually want. But what isn't enough is to just simply write down our values and behaviours and perhaps stick them on a poster and stick them in the reception area or onto mouse pads. Whilst those activities can be good for keeping those behavioural expectations in the forefront of our mind and making them visible, what really matters is that we are valuing those values in the way leaders actually behave. So that's why I say it starts with the board, because what we need is for boards to look for, hire, retain, incentivise CEOs who are behaving in ways that are aligned with those values. So, for example, we've seen many issues in organisations where what is evident is the thing we value most is profit and earning as much money as possible. Now, clearly, that's going to inspire people to behave in ways that are potentially problematic. So it's when we actually genuinely expect the CEO and the executive team to do the right thing by the community, do the right thing by the customer, when we actually articulate those expectations, but then ultimately hold people to account around those expectations, that we're most likely to see that become embedded or entrenched in the actual culture. So culture comes from being clear, but then it comes from accountability. So what do we reward? What do we recognise? What do we hold up as being successful will ultimately dictate how people behave.
Well, on a slightly different track, the sex scandals and the shenanigans that have been going on in Parliament House in Canberra, and look, it's hard to know exactly the size of the problem and the extent to which it's happening. Nevertheless, there seems to be this underlying problem. Again, how does an organisation ensure that this kind of activity doesn't happen in their own workplace?
Yeah, it starts by having awareness. It's incumbent upon us to understand what people's workplace experiences are. And if we have sexual misconduct just at the heart of the way we go about things, then we're either completely naive and not connected with our organisation and how people are thinking, feeling and behaving, or we're denying it, or we're part of the problem. So, I think when you have an environment where sexual harassment is so rife, then it says to me it's very likely there are a whole bunch of other behaviours that are equally disrespectful. So, again, we need to be observant. We need to care about other people's experiences. We need to understand where the line between, for example, bullying and banter lies. We can have a joke in the workplace, we can have fun, but we need to recognise when the joke is actually on the other person and we're across the line and we're now being disrespectful. Equally, we need to recognise misogyny or other forms of discrimination in our workplaces. We need to be observing how people, what are the mindsets that they bring, and are those respectful and therefore ultimately good enough? So, again, as I've said, it's observation, it's caring, but then it's also asking the questions. We need to create opportunities where our staff can tell us about things that might feel very uncomfortable to talk about. So whether it is a confidential survey, for example, that gives people the opportunity to say, hey, here's what it's like being me in your workplace. And then again, when we're informed, we're more likely to be able to take really proactive steps. And again, that might be around educating people, or it might be around taking remedial action.
If you want a business advisor that walks with you and not just talks with you, then Mazars is the right fit for your business. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.
Well, is there anything that should be avoided when building better governance?
Well, I think it's avoiding just taking the checklist approach that, we have a policy in place isn't enough. We don't get to, at that point, check the box and say, okay, done, we've got one of those. If we've got a policy in place, then we need to make sure people are educated around that policy. And that means more than just saying it's on the shared drive, go have a read of it. We need to actually bring people together and have honest conversations around this is what our policy requires of you. So, for a starting point, when a new person joins our team, we need to sit down and we need to be talking about here's our values, here's the behaviours we expect from everybody, here's where our workplace policies fit in, this is why they're important, and helping people to understand that we're actually serious, that these policies will guide our decision making around, as a starting point, who gets to stay, but also who is promoted, who is rewarded. So again, if we're educating people, we need to educate through our actions, not just our words. So who do we actually promote? Again, all too often you see examples where, yes, we've got the great policy and we've checked that compliance checklist, okay, we've done the right thing there, but then in the next breath we'll actually turn around and promote somebody who routinely behaves in ways that are contrary to that policy or our values and behaviours as business. So, it's actually making it matter through our actions, not just our governance processes and checklists.
Well, a lot of the examples we're discussing have larger organisations and institutions, but what lessons do you see for small business about all this?
Yeah, look, I think fundamentally the rule book remains the same. Again, we as business owners need to be informed. We need to start with our own education. So understanding, as an example, what the law requires of us is step one. Then making sure that the people within our organisation, in our teams, understand what the law requires of us. It's about making sure that you're hiring leaders who are going to be part of the solution. If you've got other leaders working for you in your small business, then making sure that they are someone who is respectful, who is sincerely committed to creating a healthy workplace environment. It's about holding them to account and making sure that you and those leaders are behaving in ways that you can be proud of, that, you're leading by example. And again, it doesn't matter how big or small our team is. We need to be connected with the people we lead. So having regular conversations with people about, again, what are their experiences like working in your business. So the more we can have trust and respect in our relationships, the more likely we are to hear the truth, more likely we are to be able to tap into that feedback from team members. And trust and respect is going to start with you being a good example of a respectful leader, and then being sincere in your desire to understand reality. So, let's be very careful not to be too dismissive of complaint. That's something I do see in a lot of small businesses. We don't necessarily feel equipped to deal with the issues. somebody makes a complaint, it can be too easy to go, oh, they've just been hypersensitive or they've just been a troublemaker or whatever the particular attitude is. Take those concerns seriously and do the work to really investigate and understand what's going on if issues do arise.
I suppose it goes without saying, but doing the right thing is actually good for business, isn't it? It's good for the bottom line.
That's right. Look, I'm a passionate believer that when people feel proud of the organisation they work with, when they have emotional ownership in that business, they're more likely to strive. They're more likely to actually work hard. They're more likely to dig deep and go beyond that compliant contribution. So, if we're serious about tapping into discretionary effort and the full potential human beings bring, then again, we're wise to create an environment where they feel respected, where they feel safe. They're in a place that they enjoy being. So, yeah, absolutely agree. Our commercial outcomes, our commercial results are profoundly influenced by the extent to which people are engaged and bringing their all to work every day.
That was Corporate Dojo CEO, Karen Gately. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.